In 2021, Amplitude Studios released a new high-budget 4X game entitled Humankind. Despite solid reviews and a lot of hype in the lead-up to its launch, it was seen by many as a bit of a disappointment. And I think that there's a single explanation for this. And that is the fact that Humankind failed to be an exact copy of Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Year after year, we see strategy game developers making this same mistake. Civilization Beyond Earth, Rome Total War 2, Civ Revolution 2, Victoria 3, and now recently, Civilization 7. All of these games were disappointing, and what do they all have in common? They are all not Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Let's leave aside the HD remake, which was an anti-Russian psyop. Since the 1990s, the number of games that are Heroes 3 has gone down significantly, despite the fact that these games have a much higher average rating on Metacritic. So why do game developers keep doing this? Are they stupid? No. It's my opinion that the industry has simply forgotten what makes this game so good. So today, I will remind you of 5 things that make Heroes of Might and Magic 3 incredible. Number 1 is exploration. To me, it is pretty clear that there is something deeply rooted within the human psyche that adores the idea of exploring, facing danger, and finding treasure. And I think developers still know that we value loot, but exploration and discovery have fallen by the wayside. Even games that should be focused around the joy of exploration and discovery fail to produce an exploration system as cool as the one that exists in Heroes 3. This includes strategy games, but also platformers, RPGs, open-world games, roguelikes. Pretty much anything that isn't Zelda or Terraria has had worse exploration than Heroes 3 in the last 2 decades. Here's how it works in Heroes. The game system is similar to Rome Total War, but until you upgrade them, your cities barely produce any resources. So most of your income comes from exploring. You can find resources, treasure, stat boosts, level ups, artifacts, unit recruitment, upgrading new cities, quests to go on. There are so many cool, often game-breaking things to find. Sometimes you don't know what the reward is. It's behind a portal, or inside a Pandora's box. What could it be? I mean, I know canonically it was a bit of a bummer, but I don't know, maybe this time it's gonna be different. Exploration can also have a sense of danger. Often you will have to fight monsters to access these rewards. Fights can be costly, so you have to choose. What fights are worth taking? And how can you take them in a less costly way? It's like Zelda, the battle is a little puzzle that you have to solve to get the reward. And of course, as you take these fights, you are leveling up your hero and gaining access to all kinds of crazy abilities. On a random map, you never know what's going to be around the next corner. Recently, I played a game on expert mode, and the game messed up the map generation such that it just gave me a Pandora's box without having to defeat the monsters that guard it. So, on the first turn of the game, I was granted 10,000 gold. Was this remotely fair or balanced? No. Will I remember it for the rest of my life? Yes, and in fact, I've already slotted this in over the trauma of my 5th grade birthday party as a core, personality-defining memory, the way it works in Inside Out. Number 2 is letting the player enjoy powerful moments. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 subscribes to a unique philosophy of gameplay design, and that is that if you just jam in a wide enough variety of disgustingly overpowered and unbalanced crap into your game, the game will be reasonably balanced, and failing that, it will at least be fun. Increasingly, we've seen a trend of games trying to smooth out the edges and make sure that nothing is too powerful. In single-player games, full stop, this is just an awful idea. Keep tabs on what strategies the AI is using, but aside from that, there's just no reason for the game to be balanced, and it certainly doesn't justify the game getting rid of cool shit. If the game is primarily single-player but has multiplayer functionality, this is still true. You cannot possibly predict what the multiplayer meta will end up being, so it's better to just design for a fun single-player experience and trust that the multiplayer modding community will balance things out once the meta is solved. In the case of live service games where multiplayer is the primary focus, I can see where the temptation comes from to balance everything, but it still doesn't make sense that way. Something will always be strong, and when you do end up with something overpowered, it's probably going to be a mid-range strategy with no bad matchups. you have probably already nerfed the alternative corner strategies that can defeat it into irrelevance. Homogenizing the game often makes things less balanced. This example is from pretty far back, but with Warcraft 2, they were just dipping their toes into the idea of asymmetrical faction design for the first time. Humans and orcs are both very similar, which makes orcs clearly better. It's not even really up for debate. StarCraft, on the other hand, is much more differentiated. That doesn't guarantee balance, but it does make it so that each of the races has different tools for handling each other's OP strategies. In StarCraft Brood War, pro players are still trying to figure out which faction is best. Another example, take classic World of Warcraft. If you compare numbers on DPS and healing charts, some classes are just good and some are significantly worse. But druids are the only class with consistent access to resurrecting in combat. That will always be valuable. And you're always going to need a shaman for their totems. But if you make it so that every class can do everything, well, you're just going to pick the class with the best numbers. It's also just boring as hell. The end result of grinding down every jagged edge with sandpaper is a lack of interesting features. Check out these wonders from Civilization Beyond Earth. These are impressively awful. It's so transparent, too. How did the developers make this mistake? If something is weak, it should be something for us to figure out. It should teach us something about the balance of the game. And it should be clear, at least, why they thought it might be strong. Here, it just looks like they didn't want us to have fun. All of this reminds me of the Loudness Wars from the 2000s, where everything was getting so compressed to shit that it lost its ability to be dynamic. Heroes 3 is Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, with that big gated reverb snare at full power, punching you in the face. This game is not afraid to let strong things be strong. Even weak factions can kick ass under certain conditions. And because there's so much randomness in how the game plays out, you can't guarantee that you'll have access to whatever your win button is that you've discovered. So you have to branch out and learn different stuff. Number 3 is challenge. Games used to be hard, and more specifically, games used to be programmed in such a way that the AI could use the systems well and interact with them in a meaningful way. Soren Johnson, the creator of Civ 3, has a full presentation discussing the difference between fun AI and good AI in strategy games. The idea is that in The Sims, you don't really care how good the NPCs are at playing. In a tower defense game, we know that in our heads the best strategy for the AI would be to clump up and not trickle in one at a time, but we don't care. In other games, like chess and StarCraft, the AI is supposed to be good. It's supposed to simulate the presence of an equal rival. I get the feeling that games are increasingly inserting fun AI into places where we should have good AI. Heroes 3 is an interesting example here. It's not the hardest game out there, and it's not the best programmed. Apparently there were some bugs with how the AI was managing ranged combat versus neutral mobs, and their necromancy wouldn't work. If you have HotA, all of this stuff is fixed, but it slowed down their snowballing a lot in unmodded games. That stuff is mostly under the hood. Your main interaction with the AI will be during combat, and in combat, the AI is a motherfucker. Aside from attacking towns, they do some really boneheaded things during sieges. But to me, the crucial point is that in combat, the AI will teach you things. They understand movement range, and their faster units will kind of zone you out. If you don't know how the wait key works, they'll show you. If they have a small stack, they'll just walk it up to your ranged units, but not hit, so you can't retaliate and kill them, but also you can't do your ranged strike for the round. They'll arrange their units to hit multiple of yours in one swing, and who could forget the classic of lightning bolting your ranged units and then immediately fleeing from the battle. Watching them do all of this is way better than any possible tutorial, and each of the things had to be programmed in, but it seems like newer games have just given up on this. Playing Civ 5 and 6 feels more like a tower defense game than a strategy game, just mowing down stack after stack of dumbass units. To me, this makes the game experience feel cheap. I'm okay if the AI has some hidden weaknesses, but when it comes to the stuff that you show the player, the stuff we actually see, PvP strategy games need to stop holding their punches. Number 4 is visual appeal. I'm going to start with an example of what I'm talking about. And for that, I'm going to need you to pretend that you're as out of touch with modern games as I am. In front of you right now are some characters from a newer first-person shooter subgenre. One of these games sold 60 million copies, one of these games sold 25,000 copies, and was immediately refunded and shut down because it was that financially unsuccessful. Which do you think it was? I cannot even believe that we have to have this discussion, but I guess I have to say it. Water is wet, and it's good when things don't look bad. These are, of course, Concord and Overwatch. They're both hero shooters, and both of them are quite colorful, maybe even eye-catching, but one is sleek and stylized, and the other is garish, but also muted and gritty. I know they were trying to look like Guardians of the Galaxy, but partly because of being a live-action movie, Guardians of the Galaxy also looks like hot garbage when you compare it to the comic. Part of the issue is realism versus being stylized. There was this switch that happened at different times for games of various genres, but basically, they switched from using graphics that are trying to convey information and represent things, to graphics that are trying to be things. Look at how the ore pit used to look. Look at how the resources used to look. Look how they sparkle. Man, it just used to do something to my brain. This is what a swamp looks like in Heroes 3. It's like a tropical emerald paradise. Coolness and aesthetics are independent of graphical quality. Newer games like Overwatch can still be stylized, and realistic-looking games can still look good. The map itself is pretty stylized in Heroes 3, but the pictures for the interiors of each of the cities are attempts to be realistic, and they still look fantastic. I know that a couple years after the release of this game, every single high-budget title looked grimy as hell and was run through the piss filter, but realism does not have to look ugly and dirty. It's a bit too dark for my taste, but I actually do like the realism in Civilization 7. As we saw before with Concord, being colorful alone does not make a game beautiful. But I just think that too often games are sacrificing aesthetic for mood, tone, or vibes. Games are supposed to look cool, and this is doubly true for games marketed around heroism like RPGs, hero shooters, and adventure games. Every single unit design and animation is gorgeous in Heroes 3, and when you're curating your army, you're kind of curating an aesthetic. Man, we treated starting towns in Heroes 3 like frickin' zodiac signs. That's how cool each of them were to us. Number 5 is a functional UI. There's a reason that Heroes is able to look so beautiful while remaining easy to parse. And that's the nested tooltips. The footage on screen is without any mods. Right-clicking on things tells you what you need to know. What are the stats of this unit? How much health does it have left? What does this artifact do? Have I visited this water wheel? Or this mercenary camp? Some additional info is added with mods, like reminding you how many units are in a pack or in a horde, but the base game is easily a 9 out of 10 in how it presents information due to its nested tooltips. In Civilization 3 and 6, right-clicking will at least open a Civilopedia article if you want to learn more. In Civ 7, right-clicking doesn't give you any information. In fact, it closes the window, which is quite frustrating. Instead, the game just dumps the info on you when you mouse over the thing, but for obvious reasons, some stuff is omitted. One thing that I feel strongly about is that the skeleton of the game is the most important thing for the developers to nail down. Beyond anything else, the game should be easy and intuitive to play. The content doesn't actually matter too much. That can be added with an expansion pack or by mods, but the user interface and the core gameplay mechanics need to be airtight. For the record, sound design is part of the UI. This is the sound the game makes when you trigger a narrative event in Civ 7. Basically nothing. This is what happens when you step on a hut. It's not quite perfect. Heroes 3 has flawless sound design. You enter a building or pick something up, and you get a cascade of harps or an angelic choir. I'm going to play a few sounds. If you've played the game, try to guess what they are. Some of the spells, like Bloodlust and Resurrection, have the coolest sound effect. I don't know how else to describe it. The game is just a feast for the senses. The visuals and sound design together make this an extremely satisfying game to play, in a way that few games are nowadays. Anyway, those are the points that I wanted to make. What do you think makes Heroes 3 perfect after all these years? Let me know in the comments. Cheers, everybody. See you next time.